Welcome, everybody. Today, I am speaking with Jamie, aka the Gut Goddess, and we are talking about reclaiming your voice and standing in your power and how that is so important for overall health and healing. So, she will be joining me live here in just a moment. I'm really excited to talk about this. If you've been following my stories, you know that this is something I've already started talking about. So, this is just absolutely perfect timing. I see you, Jamie. Let's see, I don't see an invite yet. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. This is going to be such a fun topic. Let's see, can I invite you myself? I can. Here. There she is. Jamie, aka the Gut Goddess. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So
Good.
I was just introducing the topic. So why don't you just introduce who is Jamie, who is the Gut Goddess, a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get started.
Yeah. So, like you, I'm a functional diagnostic nutritionist. Also, really work in kind of the emotional, mental, physical, space. I do custom yoga nidra, mindset reset yoga nidra, so I can help people kind of get into the subconscious to break bad habits and triggers. And I'm also the goddess portion is that I'm all about like woman's empowerment, speaking your truth, and really recognizing, like, kind of looking back at our past goddesses and our sages, like how do we sage versus age. Like, I'm super big on that. I don't want to age. I want to I want to grow into this beautiful sage and have quality life at every decade. So that's kind of like my mission, is
I
to use
love
our
that.
I know, to use our past goddesses to like learn how to step into what I call like our crown of roses, our higher self versus our crown of thorns, acting at our not highest self. So that's
Yeah. So sage versus age is like it's like growing into wisdom and confidence. It's so funny, and this has stuck with me my whole life. I don't know how old Oprah is now, so I don't know when this happened. But I believe it was her 50th birthday party, and I must have been like, I don't know, early teens, mid teens, something like that. Uh, so I believe it was 50, and she said essentially, I remember her saying, every day better.
mm-hmm.
And that hit me at a young age because I was like, that's what I want. I don't want to be unhappy. I hear all these people talking about, oh, I'm gonna be 30. I'm like, are you, like, seriously?
Like,
Like,
good, awesome, good for you.
yeah, so old, right? But no, like it's part of it is like when you shift your mindset, right? That age brings wisdom, age brings confidence, age brings all this knowledge. Like, I mean, I was an idiot in my 20s. I was like a complete idiot. I didn't know about the world. I didn't know anything about me. I didn't know anything about who I was. I made really bad decisions. I mean,
Yeah.
like, and you look, and the way the world, makes you think is like, oh, your body is going to be the best when you're 20. Those are the best years of your life, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, but it wasn't like, what I mean? So I love that whole perspective of like just getting better with our mindset, with our body, with our health, with our confidence, all of that. You mentioned yoga nidra. I have never heard that term, so I'm super curious. Like, what is that?
Yeah. So yoga nidra, it's really hard to explain because it's a lot of people think it's like a meditative state, but it's really not. It's basically like yoga for your brain. So what you're doing is you're using breath work and creative visualization to kind of take your brain into a different pattern to open up your subconscious and while you're awake. So you're kind of tricking the brain, like you're doing this left brain, right brain exercise through breathing and visualization so that your brain can kind of get into a subconscious state. And then what I've kind of done is blended hypno affirmations custom. So like I'm like, okay, what does this person need to work on? And then you impart like positive either positive affirmations into the subconscious, but you're totally awake, so you're completely aware of what's going on, but it just kind of unlocks any blockages. And then also a lot of times, like, there's so many traumas that we deal with on a gut, brain, body level that we may not even recognize. So when you can kind of impart these messages into the subconscious to kind of awaken, like, I trust my body to heal, right? I believe, because a lot of times we don't even realize that we have that block, and we do, right? We're so mad. Like, same thing you were talking about 20s. Oh my God, I was in the worst health in my 20s. Like, my 30s were amazing because I actually started to get healthy. So I didn't realize I had this, 20 years of being mad at my body, because I would never have said that, but really I was. So it opens up this different state of healing kind of on the emotional subconscious level. So that's not really what Yoga Nidra is designed to do. A lot of people use it for sleep, to help with restorative sleep, which is wonderful. But I've kind of blended it to open it up to access different ways of healing some triggers and blocks that we have on the subconscious level.
I love that because like I just think it's really neat how every individual practitioner takes something that is used for one thing and finds value in using it another way. It's like using prescriptions like off label, right? Like there's so many ways that we can use something. And I love how people will take it and find a way that like makes it work for the situation they're in. What I'm finding, I don't know how you feel about this, but what I'm finding is that everyone in our community that is doing, gut health and functional medicine, and I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of them are kind of learning that we have to add this other subconscious emotional mental piece to it, because it's like I notice that the clients that really don't see results or get stuck, right? They have a lot of this other stuff going on.
Yeah.
And that becomes just, you mentioned like the trauma, gut, brain, body stuff. We are, for those of you watching now and on the replay, Sophie and I have a trauma gut brain workshop next week, December 13th and 15th. And this is so important because I shared on my stories yesterday and shared a video. I've had just a laundry list of health stuff, a laundry list. And I had trauma very early on in my life. And then I had some very significant traumas in my adulthood as well. And all of those really, combine to what I think is an important takeaway is what we do with the trauma is there's total belief systems that are created out of it, right? And then those belief systems get stuck in our bodies. So what you were just talking about, the affirmations, is like so important because if we don't break that belief system, if we don't release the trauma, if we don't get it out of our body and like convince our brains that the opposite is true, it's going to stay stuck and like essentially continue eating away at us, for lack of a better.
Yeah, totally. I'm so excited for your workshop. I think that's so amazing that you guys are doing that, and I'm so excited for it. Like, as a practitioner, I'd like to join too because it's so powerful and amazing, and that biology of belief, and that's one of the things. One of my favorite yoga nidras that we do is this separation of mind and body, or soul and body, in the practice. So because a lot of times we always think like we are one, but really your body and your mind control different things, even though that they are connected. And so sometimes people need to separate that to actually feel like I can heal both and then come back together. It is powerful. And just like you, like that's why I got certified in this and in emotional eating and addiction, because I started noticing every single client that came to me, I'm sure and myself too, had a trauma. And honestly, everybody has trauma, because trauma is like levels, whatever. What's traumatic to me could be not traumatic to somebody else. It doesn't matter. It's still there, right? And then, like you said, as children, like, we don't process this. Maybe it happened when we're young. We don't know how to process it emotionally. So it gets stored and lodged physically. And then we have to unwind and unravel that without even knowing that it's there.
Yes. I think in somewhere in there you mentioned the word parts, like different parts of ourselves, and it's so interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard of the practice of internal family systems. So it's called IFS, internal family systems, and basically what it is it's this understanding that you have all of these parts that make you, and none of them are bad. So you need to learn to name them and talk to them and understand them. So therapists typically kind of help you go through this, and which is really fascinating. If you've ever watched the movie Inside Out by Pixar, that's actually based on internal family systems. And there's so much accuracy in terms of, so, there's joy, there's anger, there's happiness, or, whatever in those little characters in the Pixar film. And then they demonstrate how the brain works and how it has core memories and all. It's so accurate about how the brain works. And with this practice of internal family systems, it's fascinating. So when I rewatched it, I was like, whoa. Is essentially like, okay, your anxiety comes up and they have different roles that they do. Like one might be like a protector, for example. So then you learn, okay, you can actually talk to the anxiety, like, well, what do you want to be called? Okay. And you learn a name for it. And then you say, well, why are you here? And then it may be actually protecting you because it feels like, well, if I don't show up, if anxiety doesn't show up, then you're not going to remember that maybe you need to take action in this situation, or that there's a little bit of danger here, right? And so when you kind of understand and name and identify, then you're able to gently say, hey, I appreciate you. I understand why you're here. I get what you're trying to do. But I'm okay right now. I'm aware of this situation. I'm cognizant about it. You don't need to be so strong right now. So if you can just back off a little bit, then I can be in control. And that's kind of like your higher self essentially being like, I've got this, right? So it's a really interesting practice and can be really, really helpful for a lot of people. So it kind of fits into what you're talking about a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to learn more about that. I've done similar but different, where in like a hypnotherapy or hypno affirmation thing where you go in and you talk to different parts of you. So like you talk to your brain, your heart, your gut instinct, and then also your inner child, and then had to kind of identify different things of what that section of you is maybe, or piece of you is needing, feeling, expressing.
Very similar.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really cool.
I think probably what your clients feel is what I felt, which is, wow, how does you talk to yourself or that part of your body or whatever, and it's like, how does it know the answer? Because you're like, I don't know the answer, and then you go into this state where you're just listening to what your heart has to say or your gut has to say, and all of these answers come up.
Yeah.
Part of you know the answer somewhere deep in there, and it's like we've learned not to listen.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of women I think a lot of women learn how to ignore their gut feelings about things, right? Like we suppress, like, well, I don't really want to do this, but it's not that big of a deal, or whatever it might be for whatever. It might be from a trauma. It might be from a life experience. It might be from our families. It might, who knows, but it might be just, societal norms or whatever. But that all ends up playing a role in how, and I want to get to kind of the topic of reclaiming your voice. That all plays a role, I think, in sometimes we feel like we can't really express ourselves fully. And one thing that, I want to kind of mention when we say reclaiming your voice, we're not saying to like go out in the world and be assholes, right? Like if you're angry, don't go out. But I think there's always opposite ends of the spectrum, right? And I think I'm like such a good example of this, right? Like I had cancer, that there's a tumor in my neck, and I 100% associate with the traumas that came before my cancer. And part of the experience of these traumas was me not being able to share, not being able to speak, defend myself, not being able to stand up for myself, not being able to, stand in my power. And I think it literally got lodged in my body.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why this is one of the things that I'm so passionate about, is I really want to, I want to help everyone, but specifically like this whole goddess uprising thing for me is all about reclaiming your truth, your inner truth, your boundaries, the art of saying no, what your purpose is, so that you can truly speak into that, so we don't continue to lodge extra stress. That's what you and I are in the business of, right? Is how do we lower stress on all levels? Well, this is an internal stressor that is never talked about. Like it's never talked about that every time you say yes to something, when you mean no, that causes stress on your body. that gets lodged, right? If you need to know and identify what your truth is, what your boundaries are, and then be able to speak into them without guilt, or you're going to continually put stress and trauma in your body without even realizing it, emotionally and physically and energetically, right?
Saying yes when we really mean no automatically equals a stress on the body that gets stuck. That's such a good point, and I just want to reiterate that for everyone. And then that yeah, that's just such an interesting. So here's a question: why do you think that women, in particular, I mean, other people have men problems with this too, but why do you think we have an issue with boundaries? Because boundaries is so that's another thing I have. Um, I'm really strong in some areas and really historically haven't been great in other areas, right? So why do you think we struggle with that so much?
I think so. One of the things I like to do is like this. It's again, this is all the goddess stuff, but like the goddess archetype. We all have, I mean, really, and this is kind of out there, but I believe it that we all women have this instinctual, we go through different phases. Like the sage is the end, like that's what we aspire to be. But then we go through this kind of, it's called the virgin, but it's meant to be like we're pure, we're innocent, we're like open, and then we're the mother, we're the nurturer, and then we're the sage. So we kind of have, or we're the warrioress. So like we go through these phases in our life, which is how we're supposed to. But I think a lot of us get stuck when we're taught in that innocent time, or that we um are supposed to say yes, we're supposed to please, we're supposed to do all these things. I mean, it's unfortunate that we're still stuck in this. Like our power has been kind of watered down from being little girls. It was taken away, and it was never, we weren't, I mean, I don't remember learning in school how to have boundaries, that it's okay to say no, that you don't have to say yes to everybody and everything. I feel like we're taught to be this nurturing kind of person, which is great, but there is also a time for that, right? And there's boundaries for that, but we're never really taught that. And so I think that that's what happens, is we get stuck in this cycle of having to take care of everybody else, and we end up doing that without taking care of ourselves. We end up treating others better than we treat ourselves, you know?
Yeah. So you mentioned specifically, you called it the art of saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting. I saw a TikTok the other day. It was literally, he's like, here's how you have difficult conversations. And I was like, that is so helpful to me. I was like, this is great. This is such an awesome example of like, I'm not comfortable talking to you about this right now, but I think it needs to be said. So, I hope you'll bear with me and work with me on this. And just the way he, kind of taught you how to start that conversation, I felt was like awesome. So when you say the art of saying no, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think it's identifying when, so if you are a people pleaser, which a lot of people are, then it's identifying and taking a step back. Okay, so when somebody asks you if you want to do something, and you have to identify if you're saying yes because you feel obligated, or if you feel guilty, or if you actually really want to do it. And if you don't really want to do it, then the best thing to do is kind of step back and come up with some ways, like, you know what, like that sounds, for people pleasers, it's hard to be like, I don't want to do that, right? So you can be like, you know what, that sounds interesting. Let me check my calendar, instead of just saying yes to 20 things. Like I have somebody who was a client who basically said yes to 20 things, and she obviously only had space for 3 things.
Oh, no.
And she constantly stressed out, obviously constantly in a state of stress, because she was like, now I have to go back and disappoint people. And I'm like, well, you could have just, so then she started saying, okay, well, let me check my calendar. And then you have the time to think about it and
Right.
like breathe through it, and then go back and like, you know what, actually can we schedule that another time, or whatever. But that's one thing. Also thinking about when you feel like saying no, it's same thing. Do you want to say no because you don't want to do the activity, or do you need to say no? Like every time you say yes, what are you going to be saying no to?
Yes.
But I think it's more about just taking a step back and putting yourself in the, like, mind frame of, you know what, let me just get back to you. Like, it's okay to say that, because ultimately what you're going to end up doing is disappointing them and disappointing yourself, or you're going to show up with this guilt and you're not going to have a good time anyway. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So,
So are you gonna have anxiety about, oh, I gotta do this on Friday or whatever it is? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, she was just like in a constant state of stress. And I'm like, you realize this is affecting your health?
Yes.
You know? She was
Yeah.
like, oh.
My pastor has really good boundaries, and you can do it in a way that's very healthy, and like people don't, they're not going to be offended. Like I asked him, I was like, hey, do you want to sing a duet with me in December? Because he sings, he's got a really lovely voice, and we've done that in the past. And he actually said no because he's fairly newly married, and essentially he uh, committed to his wife. He used to have like another job and the pastor. Now he's being full-time pastor, and he essentially committed to his wife that he's going to be very careful with his time commitments. And so he just comes out and says that he's like, I'm going to have to say no because XYZ. And you're like, man, all these things, but also like like that's like such a nice way to share a boundary that you've created, and just why like people are gonna value that and think that's really cool and probably wish that they could do it too. Right?
Yeah, well, I think that's the exercise first, is to figure out like your boundaries, you know, and like you could do this exercise of I value, write everything down, and then so I need, and that means I will honor, right? So like, what are your values? What do you need? And how are you going to honor that? And then you can help use that as a trigger when somebody's like, you're like, I really don't want to do this. You know, you can be like, well, I value quality time with my partner. So, and I need to make sure that I let go 3 other activities so that I can honor my partner, you know? But you have to know what you value first.
Right. No, that's really true. So, how do you see this showing up, either positively or negatively, when they do work or don't do work, in people's ability to progress in their health goals?
The speaking their truth, or
All of this, setting boundaries, getting in touch.
oh, well, I mean, I think it's everything, honestly. Like, I feel like when you are in a state of like inflammation, and generally that when you finally are ready to invest in yourself, you know, I think that you have to be open to looking at all levels. And this is one of the things that really does put these hidden stressors on you. And I think for the nurturers, definitely for the nurturer type, which seems to be a lot of who I end up working with, right? They're always giving themselves to others, right? Whether it's their friends, their family, their children. I mean, which is always good. You need to be there, but they're not putting themselves first. They're not putting their mask on first. They're not taking care of themselves. So teaching them and guiding them to be able to put themselves first, I think, is the first step in healing. And how you show up for yourself is how you show up for others. So I think it's everything. I think it's one of the most important things.
Yeah. We just got a comment. Are you recording this? Please say yes. I really need my daughter to hear this. Yes, we are. I will post it on my page. It'll be in IG Live for sure. We will keep that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you mean by the term standing in your power? That's such a, to me, when I hear that, it just like invokes confidence. And I think like Wonder Woman pose.
Yes.
And like I'm standing in my power. And that, I'm assuming when you say that, you mean you're aligning with your true authenticity. You are saying yes when you mean yes. You're saying no when you mean no. And you're really rooted and grounded.
Yes, absolutely. Like for me, power, it's exactly that. Like power is another word for confidence. And I think that what I've always wanted for myself and others is full embodied confidence. So food confidence, you know what you can eat, you know, you're full, you feel good in your body physically, you
Mm-hmm.
feel good in your actions, you feel good emotionally. It's like you feel aligned with yourself, like basically just like that. So you can show up for yourself to show up for others. So to me, that's what I mean, standing in your power. Like, you know what you want, you feel good about it, you feel good expressing it, and physically you feel good. You know, I mean, I think most of the people in our community as FDNs, we became that because we wanted to help others, because we went through it. And I just wish somebody was there for me when I was a child and in my 20s to tell me, you don't have to live this way, because all I wanted, like, was to be confident in my choices, all my choices, because I was scared of food because it always hurt me. I was scared to do anything because my body hurt. And that put me in a place of emotionally, like, not feeling confident. So once I finally got everything put together, I'm like, wait, this is how you're supposed to live? Like, I can do what I want. I can now eat what I want. I can exercise. I can spend time with people. Like, I feel fully embodied and confident in my power to live my life the way that I want to live my life. That's kind of what I mean.
I like that. So, okay, we've kind of talked about like the emotional, mental trauma aspect and how that this direction impacts your ability to heal. How important do you feel like, I think it's, you have to do both at the same time. So I'd like to kind of hear your perspective. How important do you feel like, the nutrition, the lifestyle, getting those in line? Because then that, helps with the brain fog and in turn your emotions and all this kind of stuff, that direction. So how important do you think it is to address both simultaneously?
Yeah, I think that's the plan because everything's connected. And you know you said, hit the nail on the head. I mean, then there's the energetic piece too, but like, you hit the nail on the head where it's like, okay, if you're not digesting, if you're coming with gut issues, you're not digesting your protein, your food, your amino acids to make neurotransmitters to help the brain work. And I think that's a piece that's not talked about enough. It's like, okay, you're depressed, you have brain fog, you have all of these things. And a piece of that is, once we heal and fix the gut and you're digesting your food properly, that will shuttle to the brain. But then there's also the mindset piece that we need to crack open and make sure that you're open to receiving and healing, right? So I think it totally all works together, because you can't heal one without the other. You can't address one without the other, because I mean, we're a whole person, right?
Yeah, I really, really believe that and want to drive that home, because a lot of times, what you'll see is someone will have like these tools or resources they'll start working on, but maybe they are, struggling with chronic depression, and
Mhm.
part of their chronic depression is a massive gluten sensitivity, right? You can do all the therapy in the world, and if you don't get that out of there, it's causing incredible brain inflammation, and it's and in your gut, and everything. It's gonna, you will make progress to some extent, but maybe not to the full extent. So that is I just think that's really important, because again, there's both sides to the coin, and we can't swing so far in one direction that we're like, addressing your trauma will solve all your problems and you can, eat ice cream every day. So that does, like, it does really contribute to brain fog, depression, and anxiety, and your ability to actually consciously and work through these things, and you have the energy to work through these things. Because I don't know what your experience has been, but therapy or these different modalities that you can use to really get through these, speaking to your inner child, sometimes it can be really exhausting, and it can drain, depending on how intense the thing is that you're working on, what happens in the experience when you start working through it. You can be done for the day, right? So if you're not nourishing your body, your brain, you're only going to be slowing down that process.
Right, totally. And that's why I think it's important to work with like you, like a functional practitioner that understands all the different elements and does it. I mean, it is a process too. Like, you have to you have to be slow with certain things. You have to customize it. You have to really know where you're at and what you're doing at the right time,
Yeah.
just like
And,
you said.
and Jamie, they can work with you.
Yes.
Self here.
I mean, we are that's one of the things I love about our community, is like, we are so supportive. I mean, I support every FDN. I think we are changing the world,
I mean,
right? And so I really appreciate that. And I think it's all about finding, the right fit. And also, everybody kind of has a different toolbox, and that it's all collaborative. So
yeah, I am so excited. Sophie and I are actually we are going down to Texas in May to do this training to become NLPs. Uh,
ooh,
I know. To be honest, don't 100% know what that means. I know the general concept. I know the general concept.
yeah.
Basically, Megan and Alex from Zesty Ginger, if you're familiar with them,
Mhm.
it's just so cool. I think I think how like God orchestrates like who you meet and when you meet them, and just like it's just when you look back on things over like a decade, you're like, wow, like this was intentional, you know. I met them probably back in 2016 when I did their healthy hormones group. And then I met them in real life at some conferences. And then I worked with them for a little bit, a period of time. I acted as one of their coaches in their healthy hormones program. And Sophie and I have offered a similar program with Empower Her. And then now they are moving so much into the trauma and emotional and mental health piece of it too. And so Megan has become an NLP that can train other NLPs. And I was like, oh, I'm so in. Like, I don't even have to know all the details. Like, I'm so in because the way she was describing it just is like so perfect for what we want to do. And the next layer that we want to add on to, how we help our clients.
Mhm.
So I'm pumped about it. I love learning. I can't wait to continue learning. And I feel like I'm such a baby in this area. I've started taking the biology of trauma course, which is just like,
Right.
one module blew my mind. One module, like how trauma impacts your body. It's just like, why is this not talked about? You
I
know?
know. Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you guys. That's going to be amazing and super powerful. That's going to be a gift for sure. And yeah, I know. And that's the thing. It's like, I'm excited too that we're all, I feel like we are kind of shifting. Like we in the health space is shifting. And that's what we need is this movement of really, it's like it used to be called holistic, but nobody really knew what that meant. They just thought it meant natural or an alternative. But
Yeah.
really, it's supposed to mean you're supposed to address the entire body, mind, soul. So I think that we're finally getting a shift of practitioners that are like knowledgeable and want to learn more and grow into how can we really help you on a full energetic, mental, physical level. It's
Yeah.
great.
That,
It's we need it.
I feel like we need to start coming up with a really fun question to ask at the end of these. Like, so I'll ask you this one just to kind of like change the topic completely. If you could not have a natural hair color, it had to be something like, bright pink or purple or blue or green or orange or yellow or something like that. What color hair would you choose?
Uh hmm. Well, it's funny because I was a total punk rocker like in high school. I did basically
Really?
a shaved head, I was a skateboarder, and I had every single color like dyed with like Kool-Aid because that's how we did it in the 80s and 90s. So I actually am so excited for my gray, like for my gray hair. I feel like I've earned it. And I don't color my hair. I mean, it's hard to see right now, but like I'm like finally like 40% gray and I'm like stoked about it. So I would say I would want the most beautiful, like, when you take a silver crayon and it's like all waxy and shiny.
Yeah, it
Like,
can be sparkly. I mean, this is
yeah.
dream here. It could be
Okay.
glitter.
So then, yeah, I'd want it like a silver crayon, waxy, shiny, sparkle. Like,
I
yeah.
love it.
What about you?
Probably some version of like a glittery pink or purple. A human unicorn.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had I had purple in my hair like highlights one time. I really liked it. It's really fun. So,
Yeah.
anyway. Well, thank you so much for this conversation, Jamie. From some of the comments, it sounds like this really resonated with our audience today. So, where can people find you? What's your handle, website, etc., and how can they work with you and give us all the fun details?
Yeah. So I'm at the Gut Goddess, and my website is I'm really excited because I'm redoing it to launch at the beginning of the year. Super stoked, but it's currently gut uh, dash like or hyphen goddess. But I mean, I'm on Instagram. Really, I show up on Instagram all the time. So check me out on Instagram. I love to engage and talk to people, and I've got some super fun. If you're interested in this whole goddess uprising, I have a group that I'm launching in February of next year where it's not the health coaching, so it's separate. It's more about the female empowerment, understanding your goddess archetype, and how to kind of live in your crown of roses and just show up and learning the boundaries, speaking your truth, and kind of got it. We're going to do moon activation. So I have a moon's letter if you're interested in the moon. So it's kind of more about female empowerment. So I'm really excited about that too. So
Fantastic. Well, thank you for
yeah,
sharing. And I'm like I'm so glad you're excited about your new website because people will ask me about my website and I'm like, just don't even go there. Like, as I said, and I can't even remember how long. You won't find any like new information on just
Yeah.
Instagram or maybe TikTok. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically like my website. I did it myself in like 2016. It's not hideous, but it's same thing. It's like so old and clunky. It's like you have
right.
to go like 20 pages. So I'm excited to launch like something more streamlined next year.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so exciting. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. I always love having these conversations with you. So nice to see you today. So I hope you have an awesome weekend.
You too. Thanks, Kylene.
Bye.
Bye.